know, for us with that mental piece, a lot of times it's just, what's that inner voice? It's more so than us focusing today on breath work. It's, man, oh man, I'm being real hard on myself, maybe justifiably, but how can I turn that into a positive thing to make myself more ready, more resilient, and a better servant for those around me.
Things off, so we're talking to no one right now. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, for anyone who will join anytime from now, just push it farther, and it's probably like 3 minutes from now we will be having a great conversation with one of the Colorado firefighters.
Yes, today we're talking with Kevin Housley. He's a firefighter here in Colorado, up in the Fort Collins area. So we're going to be talking with him today a little bit about sort of what he does, how he challenges his resilience, different techniques he uses to maintain and improve his resilience on a consistent basis. And so we're going to kind of talk about that with him. Hopefully a lot of good stuff for you all to adopt and implement as well. But that's why we do what we do. So
yeah. Kevin is a founder of Firefighter Craftsmanship.
Yes.
Craftsmanship.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my European accent. I believe he founded it in 2016, and it's a company focusing on improvement of firefighters' performance, and I'm sure he will be able to explain the company a little bit more than we do. He's also a certified breathing coach, and someone that for me is an inspirational person, because he works on himself and inspires others, and especially the firefighters, to improve themselves so that they perform better when it really matters. So with that, shall we invite him?
Let's do it. I see he's ready there, so let's get him in.
Okay.
All right.
It looks it's going.
All right.
Kevin, good morning.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
You as well?
My camera all right? I can't really tell.
Yeah, no, you're good on this end. Love that background, that red brick wall there. That's so firefighter-like of you.
We should probably change it in our office, right?
Yeah, we need to do the same. I don't know what this is here that we're working with.
Yeah.
Anyways, good morning, Kevin. Maybe you saw Barbara and I took a rough stab at our intro of you, but here we are. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being willing to talk with us today. So we gave a little bit about you and what you do with firefighter craftsmanship and whatnot, but we'll go ahead and kick the ball into your court and let you kind of take it away from there about what you do with firefighter craftsmanship and how you kind of incorporate that into your line of work and everything like that.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the time to chat. It's been fun to get to know you guys a little bit over the last few months since we connected here. Crazy social scenes. So at Firefighter Craftsmanship, we are focused on human performance for the fire ground. And we know that, training resources are really, really hard to come by. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, especially in the social media world, YouTube, even conferences and classes, that it's hard to know what to spend your money on, what classes to take. Sometimes you gamble on a class and it pays off. And other times you gamble on a class and it definitely wasn't worth the time, let alone the money that you spent. So we're trying to, we've created a cache of training resources on the webpage, firefightercraftsmanship.com, for basic skills, because we believe that most things are rooted in basic skills. It gives us that ability to train the rest of the things. But what we've found just in our careers, for those of us involved at the strategic and tactical level of firefighter craftsmanship, is we were largely ignoring the mental piece. And so Predominantly what we focus on is that human performance piece. Yes, basic skills built upon that, but also how do we train what happens between our ears? What's normal, what's not normal? How do we get a whole lot tougher and more resilient so we can go out there and we can serve the community, those that we swore to protect. We can serve crews in our departments, each other. We can serve our families, and really foundationally, how do we serve ourselves?
Right, right. No, and that's awesome, Kevin. And for everyone out there, I mean, that's how we met. I mean, Kevin saw what we were doing on our page and our focus on the mental aspect, you know, as is what we do based off our training. And, you know, as people like Kevin out there realize that the importance of doing that, I mean, that's how we really started to jive and connect and focus on that human performance aspect. So it sounds like your approach, Kevin, and you know, married up with like some of those things that we do can really help to enhance that performance. So that being said, how is that working within its implementation into the firefighter line of work?
It's been great, really well received. You know, the organization that I work for has been very, very open to that, and has given us some fantastic opportunities to kind of hone what our message looks like. And you know, looking back when we taught our very first class regarding human performance, we call that mental toughness for the fireground. Compared to where it is today, just 5 years later, it's a completely different class, you know, and that was looking back on it, it was well received, but it was a pretty bad, rough draft, you know. And so every year it gets better. Every class that we teach, it gets better. We really, really try to play off of, you know, what are the students really after? We always start each class, you know, we write on the big board, hey, why are you here? What are you looking to get? You know, and some people are there because their command staff told them that they had to be there. And so we got to meet them where they're at. And then other people are there for one or two very specific things, or they're trying to work through some things that they know we specifically address, and they want to really, really challenge themselves and push it to a whole nother level. So it's been a really fun ride so far. We're honored that we've had really good students and really good support from the fire community here. And across the U.S., we've been very, very fortunate where we've been able to get out and teach. And it's always very interesting to us that, you know, different parts of the country, you have to really hone your class because of cultural stuff, just as far as what is okay, what's not okay. And a lot of that really comes down to how regions of the country and individual fire departments and companies and people for sure view failure. And so we talk a lot about failure. We open the door to failure being okay at times, and figuring out how do we build upon, you know, some of those failures, and how do you make yourself more resilient and essentially tougher by building on that sort of stuff. So yeah. So you mentioned, and well, let me get some space to Barbara.
Go.
So you mentioned working on like dealing with failures and whatnot. What are some of the other things that you all provide? Topics, concepts. What are some of those other concepts that you all work on with the firefighter community?
So a lot of what we do is that headspace sort of stuff, as far as you know, what are we winning the battle between our ears first? And then all of the facets that are a part of that, right? So we incorporate imagery work, so visualization work. We very, very heavy into the breathwork space in regards to tactical implementation of that. And that tactical implementation might be at home, right? I just got off shift, a 48-hour shift, hustling to get home to be here with you guys, you know? And so how do you use breath in those circumstances? Or this afternoon when I get to go pick up my kids from school, how do I use breath maybe if that's not going how you envisioned it was going to go, right? And is how do we use breath if we get the call, if we get the career call, or a call maybe that's rattled your cage a little bit? How do we use breath like that? And a lot of that to build on that as well is we incorporate a lot of tactical fitness. So relevant tactical fitness for what our opinion is needed for the job of fire, EMS, first responders. And so we focus very, very heavily on training very specific modalities. And we got John McKeon involved with that, that is his wheelhouse, you know, so we let John run with that. And he's one of those that, you know, fitness is his hobby.
Yeah.
And so we try to make that more relatable to people that, hey, maybe that's the grind, that's the resilience factor, is actually getting in there in the gym. So if you get there, you might as well make it worth it. And then what are those goals? We build all of that, right? We incorporate goals into that stuff. So the inner voice, for sure, winning that battle between the ears is a huge piece.
Yeah.
All of those are interconnected, and they ebb and flow, and you win some and you lose some.
Yeah. Now, so I'm understanding, if I understand it well, you also try to connect the physical piece with the mental piece, ideally into the training together, right? Like the physical training plus maybe some breathing techniques, or maybe the imagery there as well? Or
Yeah.
how does it look? Yeah? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean just in the gym, right? So if we're doing a Metcon style workout, maybe we're trying to incorporate something mentally, or just the fact, like, where are you at? Where's your headspace at? Are you feeling sorry for yourself right now? Are you making excuses? How are you, right? That might be the training mentality of the day, or it's working on the breath gears, you know, and how are you breathing, and am I eating air right now? Well, I'm eating air right now through my mouth, because the intent of my workout today is to go full speed and do some punishment on myself.
Right.
But it also might be on the drill ground, you know, so training in our gear. We stretched some hose lines on a real building yesterday, just in training, right? And every time we do it, which is every set, it always surprises me how much harder the job is when we have all of our stuff on, right? You add a brand new, I just got moved to a new engine company. So we're trying to learn the district, trying to learn the high hazard buildings, trying to get in and out of them quickly in the first few months of being assigned there. So we have at least a plan A, right? That's added stress. So it's not necessarily just, hey, are we going to try to get on the barbell or a brute force sandbag and just earn it that way? It might be, are we practicing mask up drills? So kind of firefighter specific, right? The faster that we mask up, the quicker we are inside for the customer. And so how are we training that? Are we just training that in a nice air conditioned bay or heated bay here in the winter, right? Are we training it with our gloves on, or are we training that thing under stress, right? So are we hitting the rope and getting our heart rate up and our respiration rate up, not like a Metcon style workout where I'm you know, closer to my max heart rate, but just elevating that, which is replicating the stress response. And if you watch, you know, some videos on YouTube and things like that, you'll see firefighters that are getting worked by the basic act, putting their SCBA mask on, and that's taking them 1:30, 2 minutes to do. And we should be doing that in less than 20 seconds with our gloves on. And so, not to say that they're bad firefighters, just we know through lots of scientific data that based on heart rate alone, things start to go away. And one of those is that dexterity piece or fine motor skills. And then it gets worse and worse and worse, large motor skills, all the way down to things like auditory exclusion. So those are all the things that we kind of talk about. And we really, really try to figure out ways to train ourselves and then share some of that information for people.
Yeah. Did you have something, Barbara?
I do, but
no, go for it. Go for it.
No,
I called it earlier, so it's yours.
I cannot not share that we had and specifically I had a chance to wear the gear and try to go through a maze. Within one of the firefighters academy, and you know, I think that's something that the physical training already implements, trying to simulate these situations similar to the performance domain. And now it seems that there is still a room for that mental piece to help simulate also the situations, and maybe that's where the imagery comes into play. And you mentioned imagery maybe twice or three times. I'm wondering how you implement imagery into your training, how that can be helpful in the firefighters domain.
Yeah, so we use imagery pretty much every day. I mean, we all think in pictures, right? So if we talk about, you know, we can activate all five senses using imagery techniques, and we try to figure out how to do that pretty much every day. And for a lot of firefighters and EMS and even police officers, you know, it's an all-consuming job. So even though I'm home right now, right, I haven't gone through any decompression period at all. It wasn't a crazy busy set this time, but you still got to kind of transition back to normal life, right? And through that, we're also always kind of thinking about, oh, how could we have done that call better? Or, man, I got to learn too much in my new area. Or that training, man, I wish we wouldn't have gotten worked like that. Or, man, that went really, really well. So we're always kind of using imagery in that sense. But we've been very intentional by using things at work for sure, and being able to run fires and emergencies and get thousands of reps in these high hazard buildings that we know we're going to be first, second, or third into, and just using mental imagery for that, right? So what does it feel like when we're riding down the road in the fire engine code 3, right? What are some of those adversities that we encounter? What's it going to feel like when we show up on scene? Or what's it going to feel like, and you can hear the dispatcher saying, hey, we have multiple calls on this, so you know you're going to a working job. Okay. And so we're building that up, and then what's my response to that? So I'm putting myself in the first person, right? And I know what I'm doing as an officer, right? I'm navigating, I'm thinking about resource needs, right? I can do all of that stuff sitting right here. I'm doing it right now, thinking about a crazy building, right? That I've been thinking about now for a couple of years. I'm doing it even as we're having this conversation. And so really putting yourself in that first person. And there's a couple ways that we use that, right? We talk about the GoPro view, so like looking through your own eyes. Talk about it from the detached point of view. So you can do that, whatever works for you, and you might go in and out of both of those different types of forms of imagery. And so, you know, seeing your engine roll up on scene and fire blowing out of the window, or you got rescues that need to happen. And so we're using that very, very intentionally. For sure every day at work. And then you do it when you're responding to a call anyways. You're trying to connect those dots. That's how our brains are built, right? To keep us and survive. And so we're doing that anyways based on the information that we're getting, whether you're the nozzleman in the back seat, the firefighter in the back seat, whether you're the driver or whether you're the officer, or you're a second, third, fourth due apparatus to those calls. We're already doing that anyways, trying to paint those pictures, connect those dots, use past experiences, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not. So for imagery, super long-winded answer for imagery, but it's really, really, really important, and it absolutely will help us be more resilient and less surprised on scene. And there's a rescue that has to happen now, versus maybe somebody that's never even considered that, and their whole mentality is, well, we'll just figure it out when we get there. Right. Or, well, that's never going to happen in Fort Collins. You know, we're just a little town, right? We're not Detroit. And that's just not the fact, right? So whether it's a small volunteer fire department or it's the FDNY, the customer expects the exact same level of service. Whether you are a professional firefighter in New York City or you're a volunteer and you have one engine and two people that are going to show up, that person expects the exact same service. And so for us, I mean, that's where it all builds from. And imagery is a very, very, very big part of that.
And, you know, I love those concepts you're talking about because, you know, you know, as you're talking, I'm kind of writing some things down. So that's why I'm looking down here. I'm just kind of capturing what you're saying so I don't lose my train of thought. But I know this is something that we talked about when we kind of had a side chat with you as well, Kevin, but it's this idea of training these things both mentally and physically or technically to build your readiness, to be ready to respond, right? That's how this allows you to perform at your best and provide that quality level of service to the customer. So I know we talked about the readiness piece, and so implementing imagery, working through different scenarios in your mind. Little nerdy minute here, but you know, psychoneuromuscular theory really speaks to that imagery piece a lot, because as you are going through these motions and going through these actions in your mind, the little neurons, and I'm not too scientific, so, but I encourage people to look it up, but these little neurons are firing, you know, as you're imagining pulling hose or setting up or even putting on your gear, right? Your body, this is the power of imagery, right? Your body is actually going through, you know, those neurons, same neurons are firing, and this is what helps to get a lot of these processes to be more automatic, right? The more automatic it is, the more ready you are to appropriately respond, right? And so I'm kind of going down that road a little bit. Barbara and I, we love that, right? That's sort of our concept, or that is our concept within what we do, right? There's the readiness piece. What are you doing to improve your readiness? And then linking that to resilience. The more ready you are, the better you respond. The better you respond, the more resilient you are, right? And so that's kind of how we conceptualize it here. But I guess two-part question. I don't want to overload you, Kevin, but you know, one part being, you know, how do you conceptualize that readiness resilience connection? And then I'm gonna stop there because I forgot my second question.
Awesome.
I'm overloading myself.
Brad overloaded himself.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish I had a notepad so I could write some of that stuff down, right?
Yeah.
I love to nerd out on this stuff and just how we can make it. How can we communicate that to terms that people can understand and just make and other people a whole lot more resilient. So readiness and resilience, you know, to us, they're really hand in hand, and you have good days and you have bad days. And so what are you doing to set yourself up for success? Even if you're having kind of a rough day mentally, right? You're tired, you're on that bell curve, or you're frustrated, or you're bringing stuff to work, or you're bringing work home, right? So we really, really are focusing heavy on happy at work, happy at the job, happy at home, because they are very, very interconnected, right? And there's lots of things. So readiness to us, right? Are you ready to go to work? Did you go out and have way too good of a time last night and get all gummed up, right? Right? You're not ready to go. Are you focused on sleep? Right? We can't control sleep when we're at work, especially for some people that are on crazy busy companies. But you can't control that, right? So it doesn't do any good to complain about it either. But if you're on a schedule where you get a 4-day like we are, right? Are you focused on trying to get good quality rest and recovery? What does nutrition look like, right? So all of these things play into that readiness response. And for us, there's a very easy correlation between readiness and resilience. So nutrition, good time to talk about it, right? We got after the first year, people are either crushing their goals, maybe didn't set goals, or maybe they're starting to waver, right? And eat some chocolate chip cookies or whatever. Okay.
My weakness.
But are you resilient enough to be ready? You know, so what are you doing to build your resilience? Are you winning some of those small battles and rewarding yourself for that? Or are you only focused on that negative piece, right? And you're just saying, hey, I could always do more. I could do more. And that's kind of the crutch that I deal with, right? Is it's never enough. And so really trying to focus on rewarding ourselves, connecting those neurosynapses, right? Get that dopamine hit based on growth mindset versus us accomplishing this massive project. That's the only time that I'm going to get a dopamine hit, right? We don't want that. We want to go completely opposite and really focus heavy on win those small battles, win them every day, lose some every day, get a little bit tougher every day because of that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for us, it's a very close correlation of readiness and resilience. They feed into each other, and you can really push the envelope on both of them, which is going to make you better in either of those categories.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I remembered my second question as well. Kind of circling back to the readiness piece, you got your technical readiness and your mental readiness. So I guess from your experience, what's the, I guess, trade-off or percentage of training physical readiness and percentage of training mental readiness? And can there be an improvement in one or the other to really combine the technical and mental aspect of the readiness and make it that much better?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I don't really have like a percentage of what I'm shooting for. I know more physical readiness training, right?
Yeah.
Every time we get to go do our performance physicals and stuff like that, you always want to do better. So you always can be more ready physically, but you can also overtrain, and so physical readiness, something that we're trying to implement is some mobility work, right? So it's easy for us to focus on how many sets and reps in the gym or how many Metcon CrossFit style workouts did you get in this week or long duration cardio or whatever to meet your goals and to make sure you're ready for the job. But are we also taking care of our body through mobility work and rolling out, right? And a lot of times that stuff's way harder, I'd rather go and do a 15-minute session on the barbell. And by no means am I a super athlete by any means, but it's a lot easier for me to track that versus laying on the lacrosse ball and causing pain in an area trying to release muscles, right? Or actually being patient and do what the PT told you to do, right? Yeah. And then, can you incorporate your mental training in there? And you do, right? So we all get in the gym and sometimes you feel great and things don't go the way that you planned and it derails you. Other times you get in the gym and you feel great and you still feel great by the end of it. And other times the hardest thing is just to get into the gym itself, And so just that realization of what am I telling myself? How am I talking to myself, And Rick George, who, we've been very, very fortunate to have a fantastic relationship with Rick. He's retired in Florida. And I mean, he was the guy in this space in the fire service many, many, many years. And we build a lot on what he talks about, and one of his famous things that he says is he's a pretty tough dude, has a pretty crazy story, but a very resilient man. And he says, if anybody else talked to me the way that I talk to myself, I would break all their teeth out.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
And that there, for us with that mental piece, a lot of times it's just, what's that inner voice? It's more so than us focusing today on breath work. It's, man, oh man, I'm being real hard on myself, maybe justifiably, but how can I turn that into a positive thing to make myself more ready, more resilient, and a better servant for those around me? And once again, that's not just for the fire ground, right? Yeah. So it's really, really easy for me to focus on my basic skills and how many doors did I force and how much hose lines did me and my guys stretch on our engine company, right? And really focus and be all consumed on that. And then I come home and maybe I'm not a great husband and I'm a bad dad because I'm grumpy, And so how do I correlate that, what we're learning for the fire ground, to be ready for the fire ground, but also be ready for my 10 and 8 and 4-year-old at home, or be ready for my wife, And so it's the same stuff. None of it's easy. That's looking at, as far as the correlation to that. I don't have a percentage. I mean, we try to get in the gym, at least good 4 or 5 times a week. And then for sure, I mean, just based on how I'm currently built and what the message that we're sharing, we're always working on some sort of mental thing, or some breathwork stuff, trying to really, really push the envelope that way. But you got to be intentional about all of it. It's not going to just happen because you think it might, right?
Right. Yeah.
You mentioned, Kevin, growth mindset, maybe twice, growth mindset. And something I had in my mind in regards to that from the very beginning of this conversation, when you mentioned that basically the company and your approach is to help, especially the firefighters, approach failures differently, more proactively. How do you utilize the growth mindset in your work and in work with the other firefighters?
Yeah, so the growth mindset, you know, for those that aren't familiar, Dr. Carol Dweck out of Stanford wrote a fantastic book called Mindset. And when we had this conversation earlier, you know, that book literally changed my life. And I told you guys when I read it, I was like, gosh, dang it, she wrote this book about me, you know?
I'm thinking this way.
Good slap in the face. And I think the American Fire Service as a whole is a very fixed mindset mentality. You know, we breed it into our people through the Recruit Academy. For those out there, how many of your Recruit Academies are punishing people for failing on the fire ground on the first day of a module? Okay, so you're punishing them because they don't know how to throw a ladder by making them do burpees or push-ups or run or whatever, but you haven't taught them how to throw a ladder yet. Now, by the end of that module, they should be able to be performing at a very high level. Our window when we're training recruits is extremely small, right? We might have 15 to 20 weeks to train these people to send them out into the wild. So they have to process and be able to implement on the skills that we're teaching them, right? But are we intentionally, as the American Fire Service, building training programs that are foundational on growth mindset? And then at some point, there is a fixed mindset piece in there as far as certification as a very, very, very baseline standard. But what's the actual standard for our fire department? That's cool. You got a cert. Big deal. What do we actually need to do on a real building when there's fences and snow and sheds and fire in the way of that task? You know, so for us, failure sucks, right? We don't want to fail. Okay, we love that Navy SEAL mentality of we fail forward. You know, like every thing that we go on has failure involved in it, and we just improvise, adapt, and overcome is something that the American Fire Service likes to use a lot. And it's true. That's what we get paid to do, or that's what we volunteer to do if you're a volunteer. That's what makes the job super fun is figuring out how do we overcome all of these challenges and get the job done. But if we're not training intentionally failure and we're not specifically focused on how many times, right? We don't need to write it down, but yesterday when we stretched on a real building, right? We went, we do a thing on our company that we took from Cody Trestrell from Brothers in Battle out of Portland called I Smell Smoke. So anybody on our crew can call I Smell Smoke at any time. And that means it's a full on LARP drill, live action role play, right? Like the park with the swords, you know? So we have full bunkers, air packs, all of that stuff. So we're a full speed rep within reason on a real building. We don't want to damage the building or anything like that. But as full speed of a rep as we can get. Okay. So that's one way to train, but we don't train like that every time, right? If we watch a really great video or we figure out a new way to drag a victim or something, we don't instantly go into an I Smell Smoke drill and try to implement that thing. We build at a foundational level. And on our company, and I know Captain McKeon, who's involved with us as well, they are very intentional about, hey, fellas, today we are practicing. And practice to them means we're at that foundational level. We're working through the steps. We're trying this new concept, right? Versus training. So they call out, hey, today we're training, which means as soon as they cross that threshold of that training center or the acquired structure or whatever, they're full speed repping it. And they're figuring out, they're overcoming those problems as they present themselves in the training environment. And then performance to us is on a call, right? We really want to be able to perform. But if we're not intentionally putting ourselves in scenarios where we are failing or failure is built into those circumstances, you don't just overcome that in the performance zone, right? It just doesn't work out. Okay. So we want to make sure that how are we building our training calendars? How are we pushing ourselves, right? If you're trying to learn a new skill in the gym, double unders, you're not trying to learn double unders after you just did an hour-long cardio workout. That doesn't make any sense. You're starting to learn double unders right after you get a little bit of a warm up. And then as soon as you start to miss them, you stop. And then you go into your regular workout. And then tomorrow you come back and you do the same thing. And you work your way up to incorporating double unders maybe in the middle of a workout, after in between, you know, a cardio and a strength session. Maybe now you're doing double unders, right? It's the same concept for us as far as EMS, fireground rescue, technical rescue, all of that. So we focus hard, and we've worked really, really hard at least at our company level, and for when we're involved in the recruit academies, getting to train the next generation, of saying, hey, we're learning right now. Some of you are going to win today, and some of you are not going to win today. Excuse me. By the end of this 3-4 day module, you're all going to be winning, and you're all going to be performing at this very high level. That's the expectation, and that's the standard. But we're going to give you the tools, and we're going to help you along the way, right? And so failure for us is huge. And I think that's where a lot of the training and the mental toughness stuff is very scary to people, is they're terrified to fail. They're terrified of what the other people are going to say about them, right? And they don't know any of that stuff is true, right? They're losing the battle right here to begin. And so recognize those failures. How do we build from those failures? How do we share those failures? How can we create an environment where that stuff is okay to talk about, to laugh about, right? To make fun of each other for reasonably. All of those things. And so we incorporate that all the time, but you have to be very, very intentional, in our opinion, to create that culture in the fire service specifically. It's that is not how a lot of fire departments work, right? And so there's fire departments across the country that their recruits, they come in and they have a certain number of points, and they can lose points throughout that academy for things like messing up a drill ground evolution, not necessarily during the performance phase of that, like during the learning thing. They can never gain points back, and if they get below a certain number of points, they get fired. That is a very fixed mindset mentality. And you can see the recruits at those places, or what that culture is when they get online. They're terrified to fail, which means they're not getting out, and they're not intentionally training in these environments, which at the end of the day is what we have to do for the customer, for the people that we have sworn to serve. So there's another long-winded answer. I got lots of long-winded answers today. So I hope that's how we view failure. It sucks, but it's necessary. And figure out how can you learn from it. Sometimes even though you fail, you might still win, right? So celebrate those failures, and absolutely celebrate how you overcame those challenges.
What? Wait, who's going? Okay, well, real quick, and then I'll shut up for a second and let Barbara jump in, because I love some of the things you said, Kevin. And you started talking about the training in certain environments, and something that I know we like to talk about a lot is creating that environment, that operational or training environment that promotes growth, right? So as we're talking about growth mindset here, what's that environment like that promotes that growing and learning? Right? Engaging in getting better, because when you stay in that fixed mindset, when you're just always trying to perform, well, that fixed mindset is really that performance mindset, that execution mindset, right? And so you stay in that execution mindset, you're always trying to look good, right? And now we're starting to lead towards burnout. Growth mindset is one of those things we talk about within burnout prevention, because it's so huge to keep you engaged in what's important, what matters, celebrating those wins, right? And learning from failure. How are you approaching those mistakes? And so I think that's really interesting to key in on is, you know, folks taking a look at, is that environment, operational and training, promoting growth, that growing and learning sort of performance, if you will, right?